All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 52 of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm once again joined by my terrific co-host, Ryan Marister. And what a week it's been for me. I'm not sure how Ryan's been doing, but I've had an
Ah,
excellent week, I will say myself.
that's good. I'm glad.
Some great basketball. And I'm just going to start this podcast off by saying that tomorrow is the biggest NBA game I will have been alive for to date.
Oh my gosh.
I have never been alive for a bigger basketball game. And my Phoenix Suns have their first opportunity in 28 years to qualify for the NBA Finals. They were close in 2010. They got it to 2-2 against the Lakers, but then they lost in six. So now we are up 3-1 on the Clippers after yesterday's thrilling defensive heavyweight boxing match that was physical. It was ugly, not a lot of scoring. We're going to start the podcast off with that, Ryan. The Phoenix Suns are up 3-1 on the Los Angeles Clippers. A lot of people are calling this series pretty much over. I think it's far from decided. What are your thoughts on these first four games?
Look, I'm going to be honest, Trevor. This series has progressed exactly how I thought it was going to progress. Look, I said Phoenix Suns in six, and I stand by that prediction. It's going to be Phoenix Suns in six. All right, the Clippers aren't going to go quietly into the night. This team, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. They know how to fight when they're down. Again, they were down 2-0 series in a row now. They always won game three coming back. They really should have won last night in game four, if I'm being honest. They had all the momentum, and then they just forgot how to make a shot for about 7 minutes. It was the most disgusting performance I've ever seen. And even Ty Lue's coaching and his adjustments, even he couldn't figure out a way. I mean, he can't make the shots for the players. Like, they got to make their open shots. But this series is playing out how I thought. I don't know. The Phoenix Suns are just playing really good basketball, and even when they're playing bad, they're still finding ways to win, which is a mark of a really good team. I've said it before. I do want to say, Trevor, this is the fourth time that Trevor said that the Suns have had the biggest game that he's ever been alive for. So I just, I think it's kind of funny.
I've never said that. I said the biggest game in some odd years.
Okay, fine. In 10
Tomorrow
years. In 10 years.
Tomorrow is the biggest game I've ever been alive for as a Suns fan. It's the second biggest game I've ever been alive as an Arizona sports fan.
Wow. Regardless, look, I think that the Clippers are going to come out tomorrow and make sure the series doesn't get closed out in five. I think that Booker and Paul's struggles are going to continue. I mean, like, it's been 2 straight games now of like monumental struggles shooting-wise from the floor, and I don't see that changing. I think it takes more than just one game. Like, I don't think they're going to come out in game 5 and light the world on fire. But I think that the Clippers will, because their backs are straight up against the wall. And I think that they're going to be forced to play elimination basketball, which is what they're in right now. And I think that they're going to step up. But I do think Phoenix will win game 6, because Phoenix will not go on a losing streak. They haven't all postseason, and they won't start now. Trevor, I'll toss it over to you in a second, because I know you have a lot to talk about, because these are your Phoenix Suns. But I just want to say I'm really disappointed in Paul George. I don't know. He's really been bad in these last few games, Trevor. I mean, it seems, and look, I get that he's the guy that has to shot create pretty much every possession he's on the floor, but they won game 3 by double digits, by 14 points, and Paul George shot 34% from the field, 27% from 3. I mean, this was not his doing. He was not the reason they dominated that game. At least his shooting wasn't the reason, I should say. And his shooting has not gotten better. I mean, Trevor, in game 4, I mean, everyone struggled, but I just want to point out Paul George again, 5 for 20. I mean, that's the worst out of any player in in the game that took double digit shots. I mean, they took 10 shots or more. He had the worst field goal percentage out of everybody. So I think that that's just plain unacceptable. I think that you need to hit your shots, and you need to hit your free throws. I mean, it's as simple as that. I go back to game 2, a game that the Clippers also should have won. Paul George missed 2 crucial free throws. And if you'd only made one of those, Trevor, we would have a whole different conversation right now, because that would have been a tie game going to OT in game 2, even if DeAndre Ayton makes that shot. So we have a whole different conversation at this moment in time. But Paul George, time and time again, while he does hit clutch shots at times, while he has stepped up overall in this postseason, he's let me down when it matters most. And if you're a superstar, Trevor, and you want to be treated as the guy with respect in the playoffs, you need to show up. You need to make the baskets when your team needs them the most. And he can't always do that. He can't even half the time do that. And that's the reason the Clippers are down 3-1 in the series, in my opinion.
Interesting points. I'm gonna say last night's game was
Yeah.
was one of the weirdest NBA games
It,
I've ever watched. Neither team scored 85 points. I don't remember the last time that's happened in an NBA game. Neither team even reached 85 points. That's kind of unheard of. It reminded me of like an 80s bad boy Pistons game where there was just a lot of defense, a lot of physicality, and not a lot of scoring. I'm proud of my Phoenix Suns, and once again, they've shown me something new. They've surprised me another way, and they were able to win a grudge match. You know, this team all year has relied on precision, chemistry, offensive, synergy and fluidity. Yesterday, that was not there. It was a lot of iso ball, a lot of bricks tossed up by Chris Paul and Devin Booker again, who have stunk it up these last two games. And they won this game with defense. And DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton has been the best player in this series. He had a 19-point, 22 rebound, 5 block game yesterday with 9 offensive rebounds. Talk about dominating the game on both floors. DeAndre Ayton was absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to touch on your point now about Paul George.
Yeah.
And this is where I feel bad for the Clippers a little bit because the NBA screwed them with the scheduling of this series. And I want to go back to the Utah series a little bit.
Okay.
The Clippers won that series in 6 games, right?
Yep.
And they only got a day and a half in between the end of their series and the start of our series. Milwaukee played a 7th game. They got 3 whole days. Atlanta played a 7th game. They got 2 whole days. So how do the Clippers not get more time off? I get it's a little bit of a rushed, condensed season.
Sure.
But now it's all thrown off, right? The Hawks and the Bucks are playing their game 3 tonight when the Suns and the Clippers have already played 4 games. So why couldn't the NBA give a couple extra rest days through the progression of this series?
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. So touching on Paul George and the Clippers are flat out exhausted. They just have nothing left in the tank. Did you notice, Ryan, 80% of their misses yesterday were short?
Oh, yeah.
Did you?
100%.
Or was that just me?
No, you're definitely right. 100%.
Everything was short. They have no legs.
Yep.
They've played 13 playoff games in 25 days. That is absurd.
That's
Kawhi Leonard is out. So we can talk about how Paul George has been horrible and statistically he has not been great. But let's look at the circumstances. He has to be the shot creator every game, every other night. I mean, he's getting no rest. He has to do it himself. He is exhausted. The Clippers have had to play so much basketball on so little rest. And I just think they're running out of gas. And I feel bad for them because the NBA, I will say, screwed them a little bit. And I'm willing to admit that as an unbiased analyst of the game. Going back to the series, though, I think the Suns are going to close it out tomorrow. I'm not confident in that prediction because the Suns have shot the ball so poorly these last 3 games. But I do think coming back home is going to help Chris Paul and Devin Booker, whatever it is, the energy in that stadium. I was at the game last night for a road rally, and there were more fans at that game than the Clippers game. And I'll stand by that prediction. There was probably 14,000 people in that stadium last night, in the Phoenix Stadium, not the Staples Center. Yeah. And it was rowdy for just a little bit of a road rally type thing. So it's going to be crazy tomorrow night. I think Chris Paul and Devin Booker are going to play better. They went 14 for 44 in game 4, 10 for 40 in game 3.
Yeah.
I would think at some point they're going to start shooting the ball better. The one thing I want to see out of my Suns in game 5 is a lot less iso ball. I saw a lot of isolation with Devin Booker, particularly in the 4th quarter. And no offense, Devin Booker was tossing up bricks. And I get it. He has a broken nose, and I'm sure that is affecting him a little bit. It's just probably just an uncomfortable thing on his face to deal with. But your most effective offense was, I'll give you a perfect example. Out of a timeout, 71-70 after like 10 straight misses or whatever it was. There was like 6 minutes left in the game. We've been stuck on 71-70 for however long. Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, high screen and roll. Chris Paul takes the screen. DeAndre Ayton rolls, alley-oop. That's our best offense. Our best offense is a screen and roll. It is not isolation for Devin Booker. If we want to run plays to get Devin Booker the ball in his spots, that's great. But just giving him the ball at the top of the key and saying, go make a play is not working right now because the shot is off.
Yep.
Chris Paul has been surprisingly very rusty. I thought, game 3 made sense. He had 11 days off.
Yeah.
But yesterday he was not much better. He was 6 for 22.
Yeah.
Game 3, he was 4 for 19.
Yeah.
I mean, the Suns, I will say, we've definitely toughened out a couple of these wins, but we're lucky to be up 3-1. This series could easily be 3-1 Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's not over. You have to win that fourth game. And tomorrow's game, as I said, is the biggest game I've ever been alive for. I'll stand by that prediction. But it's also going to be, a very tough game to win just because the Clippers season is on the line. They were down 3-2 against Dallas. They've been down 2-0 against Utah. So they're very good with their backs against the wall. And Ryan said they're not going to go easy into the night or whatever the hell that phrase was. So I expect tomorrow to be a very physical game. I do think my Suns are going to win. But I think Chris Paul and Devin Booker have to play better because I anticipate the Clippers are going to play a little bit more free now that they're down 3-1. They're playing with house money. No one expects them to win. I think they're going to make more shots than we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough for me because here I have a few points I want to make. First of all, I don't know. Devin Booker's really, you're right. He's just really been struggling. The nose has clearly been bothering him. And I don't know. He's just been settling for a lot of ISO shots. I don't know why. I think that Monty Williams has to just let him know, like, hey man, like, look, you're struggling right now. Let's just get to what we do best, which you're right. It's the high screen and roll. It works every time. It really does. Especially if Chris Paul's hitting his mid-range shots. It works better, right? But it still works really, really well either way. And I don't know. He'll get out of his funk eventually. All good players do. I expect him to do that. But he's just struggling right now. There's really not much else to say. So if they can, turn away from his ISO style, I'm expecting them to in game 5. I'd be surprised if they let Devin Booker just take the ball at the top of the key like they were in game 4 and had him run those ISO plays. But who knows? Maybe Monty Williams wants to get him confidence by keep letting him do that. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that they might go away from that in game 5, which would be the smart move. And the Clippers, look, I already pointed out what I said about Paul George, and you're right. They've played a lot of games, but I stand by what I said because, everyone's had to play a lot of games this year, not only this postseason, but this year. This schedule's been brutal. All these superstars have had to do it. Atlanta had half a day more rest than the Clippers, and Trae Young went out and put 48 down in game 1. That's not to say
they didn't have. They had a full extra day.
They
had an extra day and a half.
I thought you said that Atlanta had about 2 full days.
Atlanta played Sunday night. They didn't play again until Wednesday night. Clippers played Friday night. Played Sunday.
So they had 2.5 days. Yeah. Okay. So they had an extra day. Yeah.
Which matters.
That definitely matters. Look, I think it definitely contributed. I'm just saying, regardless, missing 2 free throws at the end of the game, I just think that he just misses timely shots. And there are a lot of, Trevor, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of other things that went wrong. When people say it's all Paul George's fault for missing those free throws, for them losing that game because he'll miss those free throws, that's not true. There are so many other things that could have changed over the course of that game that could have been altered. Other guys could have made shots. Other guys could have made better defensive effort. So I don't like when people put the full blame on one guy. But I wish seeing him as a superstar that he would make some clutch free throws, some clutch shots. And I haven't quite seen that outside of that one shot he had in game 2, I believe, to take a 1-point lead, which was an immensely clutch shot. But outside of that, I haven't quite seen it from Paul George, and I wish I did. I do want to bring up Ty Lue. Again, I know Trevor's brought him up in the past and complimented him on his coaching, his adjustments, but I want to bring him up as well because, look, I've had my doubts about Ty Lue. I had my doubts ever since he was the Cleveland head coach. As a Cavs fan, I wasn't the biggest fan of Ty Lue. I thought he did a decent job. I thought he got along with LeBron and got along with the players, which is exactly what we needed him to be. But in Cleveland, he wasn't really, even if he did make adjustments, a lot of the perception was, oh, that's LeBron. Everyone's public perception was that's just LeBron James, doing his thing with the team, telling Ty Lue to make those adjustments. Everything fell onto LeBron, and all the, the gratitude and all the, the credit was given to LeBron James, not Ty Lue. So to see him thrive and make the proper adjustments game after game as the Clippers head coach, down 2-0 in 3 straight series and always bouncing back and winning and making good adjustments, I just got to give him credit because, putting in Ivica Zubac has been a fantastic adjustment. He's played fantastic basketball, even in game 4, Trevor, when everyone else was struggling. He continued to play well. He had I mean, he had 14 boards. He went 5 for 8 from the field. I mean, he had 7 offensive rebounds. I mean, he only had 2 fouls as well as a big center. That's really, really good. So, I got to give credit. And putting in Patrick Beverley, I think, was a really good move as well. I think that Patrick Beverley did a good job playing, just being the normal Patrick Beverley he's always been, being his pestery self on the defensive end, even though Trevor thinks he's a little bit overrated on the defensive end, I think. But yeah, I just got to give him credit. I think he's done a good job this series and just these playoffs in general. So I wanted to shout that out. But yeah, I think Phoenix pulls this out in 6.
Okay. Where do I go from here?
I don't know if you want to
well covered.
Mention anything else before we move on.
No, I was thinking I was gonna build off your Ty Lue thing a little bit.
Yeah,
So I'll stick with that. I have a lot of respect for Ty Lue.
Yeah.
Because in today's NBA, I feel like there's certain levels of treatment towards different players. I think some players, the superstars, are they really coached that hard? Are they ever called out for making mistakes? Probably not. And I think that's created a certain level of sensitivity among superstars, thinking that they're more important than what their coach has to say and whatnot. And I want to give Ty Lue a lot of credit because I heard a story the other day for Brian Windhorst on ESPN talking about in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals, the Warriors and the Cavs, obviously a fantastic series. The Cavaliers were down 7 at halftime, and I think that was when Draymond Green was going off in that Game 7, and LeBron was the primary defender on Draymond Green. And Ty Lue called him out. He said, "Hey, you got to play better." And LeBron, like his normal self, is very sensitive and a big baby. And LeBron, freaked out and it was the first player out of the locker room to go out and shoot warm-ups. So I thought that was very telling of LeBron as a person. No, that's a half joke, but and just interesting his reaction. I'll say that. And for me, I respect Ty Lue for that because Ty Lue is the coach and players don't get to run your locker room. It's your locker room. And to me, that says a lot because he doesn't care who you are, what your status is in the league. He doesn't care if you're the superstar, the GOAT, the 12th man down the bench. I just thought that was very interesting and very telling that this guy wants to win and he doesn't care who you are. He's going to coach everyone the same. And it also shows that, again, for coaches, if they're not calling you out and they're not coaching you up and they're not getting on you every once in a while, they don't care. It's a good thing when they get on you. It's a good thing when they get mad at you because that shows that they care about you. They want you to get better. They don't want you to make that same mistake again. And that's why CP3 has been so great because the other guys understand that CP3, if he wasn't coaching them up, that meant, that would mean that CP3 doesn't care about winning. He doesn't care about being in Phoenix. But the fact that he's ridden DeAndre Ayton so hard, the fact that he's ridden Devin Booker so hard, he's ridden all the role players so hard, that shows a level of care. And DeAndre Ayton said it last night. I'm kind of getting off topic, but
it's okay.
DeAndre Ayton said it last night. He goes, "Chris Paul has turned my career around." And I thought that was very telling. And we all kind of saw it. We saw it in DeAndre Ayton's play, but DeAndre Ayton's definitely matured. And I think all the stuff that Chris Paul has taught him will go a long way. And he's right. I think it has turned his career around. But back to Ty Lue, that just shows me a lot. And I now have a ton of respect for him. I think he's had a fantastic postseason dealing with Kawhi Leonard going down, taking out Utah, making all the right adjustments, playing small when necessary, playing big when necessary, playing Patrick Beverley more when necessary, giving Luke Kennard more minutes when necessary. I just think he's ran into too good of a team. At the end of the day, you can't make enough adjustments to beat a title team like the Phoenix Suns. And we'll see. Game 5 is going to be interesting. I would expect more offense, but I don't really know. But I think Ty Lue does deserve a lot of credit for this postseason run. And he's a top coach in the NBA now, and I think that's hard to dispute.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that these playoffs have definitely given him, more respect than he previously had. Like not only in the NBA, I think he probably had respect in the NBA, but around the country, the public perception of him, I think it's definitely taken a turn for the better. But Trevor, I don't know if you've anything else to add on top of that, but if not,
one more thing. I do want to add.
Go ahead.
This is more about the Clippers.
Yeah.
What a pathetic fan base the Clippers have. I am just like, I'm disappointed because I look at their stadium 10 minutes before tip-off and it's half empty. Ticket prices are half as cheap there as they are in Phoenix. I mean, that should never happen. If it was the Lakers in town, those tickets, you could find mid-level seats in Staples Center for $170. I was looking at prices. I thought about going to Game 4. You could find in Phoenix, you can't find nosebleed seats for $300. So for me, the Clippers have a pathetic fan base, and I want to call them out for that. Comparing the other three fan bases of Phoenix, Milwaukee, and Atlanta left, it's not even close. And I feel bad for the players a little bit because having a strong fan base and having that home court advantage has been huge in these playoffs, and it's especially for my Suns.
Yeah.
And I was at the game. I was at the Suns arena last night, as I already mentioned. It was electric in there. It was full. The entire lower level was full, and nobody was playing on the court. It was just a watch party, but the stadium was probably 70% full, which just shows you, it just shows a different level of care in the community and what this means for the community since the Phoenix Suns have started winning. But I want to call it the Clippers fan base. Stephen A. Smith on ESPN also said it. Pathetic fan base. Not a strong fan base.
Yeah.
Ticket prices are way too cheap to be a Western Conference Finals home game. That's what I wanted to say to end this segment.
And look, we can transition to this next Bucks-Hawks series because this goes into this series as well, in my opinion. And look at these two teams, Trevor. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks, in my opinion, two small market teams. I think their fan bases are doing fantastic this postseason. When I look at these games, when I look at Milwaukee, and particularly Atlanta, but both, I think Atlanta more so, these fans are electric, and this stadium is full, at least from what I'm seeing. Both of those stadiums are full. I can't tell you how much the tickets are going for, but they sound loud to me. And you're right. I mean, I think these small market teams, I don't know what it is, but it seems like the fans just are more invested. It seems like they care more. I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know what it is, but you're 100% right. I mean, when I was watching the game, Trevor, I kid you not, I thought the Clippers were still at like some like capacity limit. I was like, oh, maybe they're like 70 or 80% capacity.
Right.
Like maybe that's like a limit. I looked it up and they were given the clearance to go full capacity. And they're like, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm looking on just on TV, just looking at the court, there's a bunch of empty seats.
Right.
I'm like, are you serious? And I listened to the crowd and there's Suns fans cheering like not as loud, but almost as loud as the Clippers fans in the LA Stadium in Staples Center. And I think that's absolutely horrible. And I wanted to say that going into this Bucks-Hawks, this series, both of these fan bases have been fantastic, I think. Watching the first two games.
Well, if you look at
Milwaukee, the fans have done a great job, and Atlanta throughout the whole series, their series have done a great job as well. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, if you look at the Milwaukee fan base and you look at that outdoor viewing party,
wow,
you can't see ground. It's literally shoulder to shoulder, like
for a long way,
probably a city block quarter mile deep. I mean, that is insanity, and that's great to see because that just shows as a play. If I were a player in the NBA, that to me is like that's fulfilling because that shows me that like I'm appreciated, and it shows me that people care about what I'm doing, and they're proud of my effort, and they still will support me win or lose.
Yeah,
and I think that's just a very fulfilling feeling. But yeah, if I'm the Clippers players, I would be very disappointed. You're right, Ryan. Yeah. And it was not very loud. And there were a lot of empty seats in that stadium. And my Suns fans were loud and proud in an away game. I personally knew about 10 people at that game yesterday. Not quite 10. It was more like 7 people. But I personally knew 7 people at that game yesterday, all Suns fans. So I think that shows you a different level of care between fan bases.
And I think, Trevor, it stems to the fact that these 3 teams, the Suns, Bucks, and the Hawks, all these teams really haven't had this level of success in quite a while. And neither of the Clippers, honestly, which is even more astonishing to me that they don't care. But I don't know. I think, and I don't want to make a rash judgment because I think the Nets fans and the Knicks fans are very passionate. I think they were loud.
And the Lakers fans have a good fan base.
I think it goes with like the Chargers, right? In the NFL. Same thing with the Clippers. For some reason, some of these teams aren't chosen by the fans. I think the White Sox in the MLB instead of the Cubs, right? I think a lot of these teams that are in the same city as another team just aren't as popular, and people just don't care as much. I don't know what it is. I've never seen a playoff game, especially a conference finals playoff game in any sport that I watch, not be sold out. I think that's atrocious. I think that's just terrible. So I'm really glad you pointed that out actually. But we can move fully into this Bucks-Hawks series, Trevor. And I wanted to make a couple comments before I toss it over to you. First off, this series is also going exactly how I thought. I said Atlanta Hawks in 7. I stand 100% by that statement. The Atlanta Hawks, and the reason is because the Atlanta Hawks weren't expected to win any game in Milwaukee. And they came out and they won game one. They won a game that they weren't supposed to win in Milwaukee. All right. And let me just say, Trae Young was sensational. And I mean, we all know it, but I'm going to say it. He put up 48 points and 11 assists. I mean, the guy shot 50% from the field, only 30% from three, but that's okay because he made all of his shots inside the arc, or at least a lot of them at a high rate. And the role players were fantastic too, Trevor. They were down at the end of this game. I do want to note they were losing at the end of this game. I think they were down by 4 or 5. John Collins hits a clutch corner three, right, to pull them back within, I think, 2. And then Clint Capella made, I believe, an and one bucket later thereafter, a layup. He made an and one. And, I just want to point that out because it looks like in the box score that it might have been all Trae Young. And while he did do the primary heavy lifting, these role players stepped up. So I wanted to note that because it's not like these Atlanta role players weren't playing well or weren't stepping up in big moments. They were, and they did. So I wanted to note that because there were some big time moments from Collins and Capella. And, I need to point that out. I need to give them the respect. And then game 2 went about how I expected. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a blowout, but I did think Milwaukee was going to come back with a lot of fire because they were in their home court. They knew they couldn't go down 2-0 going to Atlanta, a very hostile environment. And so they had to come out and play hard, and they did. They didn't mess around. And Trevor, it was 36-39. Bucks were up by 3 in the second quarter. 5 minutes later, the Hawks were down by 20. And let me tell you, it was like, I don't know if McMillan didn't want to call a timeout. I think he already had, but you got to call another one. I don't know, man. They were down, I think, they were down by 3, then they were down by 10 or 12, and then it just kept going, kept ballooning. It hit 20, and then I think soon after it almost hit 30. And it's like, man, you got to try to call a timeout and try to just maybe calm your team down, give them a set play to make a bucket, because Atlanta was just turning the ball over, I think, on 3 or 4 straight possessions there. Milwaukee couldn't miss from 3. It was just a horrible situation. It lost them the game. But, I don't put too much stock into game 2. I think Atlanta's going to come back, at least make it very close in game 3 tonight. And I expect them to win the series in 7. I think both these teams, I think Milwaukee is a better matchup, like we both noted last week, but I think Atlanta has Trae Young. I think they have the underdog mentality. I really like that. And they've been playing kind of the underdog / villain, particularly Trae, this whole postseason. And I think that continues. And I think it's going to be a great game, great series. But I think that the Atlanta Hawks, the 3-point shooting team that they are, I think they're going to pull this out.
Yeah, I disagree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
It's going to be Bucks in 5. I said that at the beginning of the series. I don't see Atlanta winning another game. Milwaukee just provides too many matchup issues for Atlanta on defense. I think Drew Holiday is a great example of that. I think he's going to make Trae Young play a lot more defense than he's had to in the last couple of series, which is not going to allow Trae Young to be as effective on offense. We saw in game 2, Holiday go 9 of 14 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, had 22 points, also had 7 assists to he had 3 turnovers, so that's not great. But Drew Holiday had a very effective game 2.
And game 1.
Game 1, he was also really good. But they actually told him after game 1 to, don't worry about your offense. We need you to just follow around Trae Young. And he did a very good job of that in game 2. Trae Young was not great. Only had 15 points, 1 of 8 from 3. For me, game 1, I think Charles Barkley said it best. I've been quoting a lot of people today, but Charles Barkley said it best. Milwaukee treated game 1 like game number 52 of the regular season, and that's why they lost. To me, there was just a certain level of lack of care, lack of attention to detail, and even in the final 3 minutes, they got out hustled, they got out worked. Atlanta was getting offensive rebounds and getting second shot opportunities. That's why they won the game, because they got extra chances at the end. And to me, that's just a level of effort that Milwaukee lacked in game 1, and that's why they lost game 1, probably because they underestimated Atlanta. I've been underestimating Atlanta all postseason. I thought they'd beat the Knicks, but I thought they'd lose in 5 or 6 to Philly. I was wrong about that. I thought I was debating a sweep in this series, but they took game 1. So it's fair to say that Milwaukee probably underestimated the Hawks, but game 2 showed me everything I needed to see. If Milwaukee wants to play, Atlanta can't beat them. I mean, you saw Milwaukee turn it up on defense. They finally started hitting some threes, which definitely helped them. I think they hit 15 threes in game 2. Still shot 36% as a team, that's pretty good, but it's not like fantastic or anything. And this game was over at halftime. I mean, it was a 30-point game at halftime. It got as bad as 40 at some point. And this is when you know that there's just a mismatch here. Milwaukee won this game by 34 and got outscored by 6 in the fourth quarter. They were up by 40 at the end of the third. That's just absurd. And I get it. It's not going to be a 40-point game every time.
No.
But to me, Milwaukee's just bigger. They're better. They have more experience. And Atlanta's just so young, man. And they haven't been here before. They don't really have that veteran guy that has a ton of big game playoff experience. What I mean by that is they don't have a vet. For example, my Phoenix Suns were really young, but we have a guy like Chris Paul, who's our leader and also has a lot of playoff experience. Atlanta's leaders, Atlanta's best players, Atlanta's core doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. Trae Young, John Collins, Bogdanovich, Kevin Huerter. Gallinari has a little bit to a certain extent, but not as, kind of like the lead guy. So for me, I think this series is going to be a great learning experience for the Hawks. I think they're going to get the gentleman's sweep, Bucks in 5. But yeah, Atlanta's had a fantastic season. I expect them to play hard over these next 3 games, but Milwaukee's just a better team. And it's going to set up for a great finals, assuming Milwaukee and my Suns, win their series. I think Milwaukee and Phoenix would be a fantastic NBA Finals.
Yeah, look, I won't harp on this too much, but I just disagree. I think that you're underestimating the impact I just think you're underestimating the impact the Atlanta home crowd is going to have. We were just talking about home crowds and their impacts, and Atlanta's crowd has been one of the loudest in the postseason. Up there with Phoenix and Utah and Brooklyn, some of the loudest that I think I've heard from the TV. But I think you're underestimating the impact that will have. I think you're also underestimating the screen and rolls that they're running with Trae Young. I mean, they're the same thing the Suns run. It really isn't that different. The only difference is Trae Young takes floaters instead of mid-range fadeaway jumpers like Chris Paul does. I mean, it's the same thing, right? And it's been super effective for them the whole postseason. It's going to continue to be extremely effective as long as Trae Young does that instead of keep taking contested threes that he's hitting at about a 29% clip in the postseason. And so I think that right there is something that the Bucks almost can't defend. I mean, it's near impossible. It really just is, especially when Trae's hitting his mid-range, his floater. It's nearly impossible to defend. So I think that that's going to keep them in a lot more games than you give them credit for. I also think, and look, they have Lou Williams, not saying he's had like big game playoff experience, but he's had a plethora. He's had a lot of playoff experience, not like they've made it to the finals.
Off the bench.
But
yes,
as a 3-time Sixth Man of the Year. Yeah. I mean, the guy's
it's different though. It's nowhere near the same thing.
The guy's one of the, but that's like saying, well, I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but I think that it doesn't really matter if you're starting or not. When you're one of the second best scorer on your team on a playoff team, I think that you matter in the locker room and on the floor. And I think that I think he's still a very important voice for that team. At least he should be. Not that I don't know the locker room, but he should be. He should be a vocal leader in that locker room, having all that playoff experience as one of the best players on his Clippers team. But regardless, I also doubt Milwaukee's ability to shoot consistently. I mean, I look at Giannis taking threes game in and game out. His free throw struggles continue, especially in Atlanta. It's going to continue. Drew Holiday takes offensive games off. Supposedly, he just starts hitting the backboard on a bunch of threes. I don't know what the deal is. So who knows if he starts doing that in games 3 and 4. Chris Middleton has 6 for 23 games like he did in game 1, 0 for 9 from 3, or 0 for 6 from 3. Like, I mean, these guys just have insanely bad shooting nights at random times. So I doubt their consistency. That's why I think this series at least is going to be stretched out more than you think. And I just think that Atlanta's shooters are better. I think that Milwaukee's defense is better, but I just think that Trae Young is so hard to defend with Capella on that screen. I think that it's going to be very difficult for the Bucks, and that's why, I think it'll go further than you think.
I'm glad you brought up Giannis because Giannis has been fantastic in this series.
He
was great in game 1, and he was also great in game 2. And look, Giannis is going to take a couple threes every game. He took 3 in game 2. He missed all of them. He'll take 2 to 3 threes a game because they're just going to give it to him. But other than that, if Giannis drives the ball and gets in the post, no one on this Atlanta team can guard him. He's just such a matchup problem for the Hawks because Capella doesn't quite have the lateral quickness and footwork to keep up with him. Collins doesn't really have the size.
Yep.
Gallinari doesn't really have the quickness. You can build a wall, but if you build a wall, if he makes the right pass, they do have shooters. So I just think Giannis is just such a matchup nightmare. And if you're the Atlanta Hawks, if you're relying on Milwaukee missing open shots from guys like Brendan Forbes, PJ Tucker, Drew Holiday, Pat Connaughton, you're playing with fire there because we saw in game 2, those guys made them pay, and Brook Lopez made them pay as well. So for me, Giannis is just such a matchup nightmare, and Atlanta has no answer for him. I just think Milwaukee's just better. They're just better than Atlanta. There's a reason Atlanta had no All-Stars this year. Trae Young probably got snubbed in the grand scheme of things. But Atlanta has no All-Stars. They had no all-defensive players. I'm not going to say they've relied on a couple of easier playoff matchups, but they got an overachieving Knicks team with no talent. And they beat a 76ers team where Ben Simmons forgot how to shoot free throws and blew a 25-point lead. So I'm not going to say
oh my
Atlanta's
gosh.
had a fantastic postseason run here, but Milwaukee's a different level of competition from those other two teams.
Yeah, and look, I can wrap this up because we keep going back and forth and this is a good discussion, but I just want to say that I think that Philly was the 1 seed. I mean, we all knew they shouldn't have been, but they're a top.
So was Utah.
They're a top 3 seed in the East. Okay, Philly is better than Utah normally. I would take Philly over Utah in a normal series. All right, and I think everybody would. I
would take Utah over Philly.
Oh my gosh.
100%.
Okay, well, that's a conversation for another day. But look, I think that to say that beating the 1 seed is easy series, to beat a top 3 defensive team in the NBA, in the Knicks, coach of the year, most improved player,
shouldn't have been coach of the year.
Favorable matchup, easy matchup.
I'll take a ring instead.
Okay, you take a ring. Look, we both personally know a couple people who are Suns fans who think that Thibodeau deserved that award. So look, I think Thibodeau, that's another conversation as well. But point being, I don't think matchups are an excuse for that. I think the Hawks have just continually overachieved. And look, you can doubt them again.
I agree with that.
I was doubting the Suns and the Hawks for multiple series for the whole regular season as well. You can keep doubting the Hawks, just like I was doubting the Suns. But they're going to prove you wrong, Trevor. We can talk about this next week when the Hawks are up 3-2 or tied 3-3 going into Game 7. But we'll see what happens in the next week. It'll be interesting, certainly, if Trevor's right or if I'm right. We'll see what Milwaukee and Atlanta have in store for us over the next few games. But Trevor, enough about this series, enough about the current playoffs. I wanted to shift to one other topic in the NBA. Actually, we both did. We both thought this was going to be a good topic, and that's Damian Lillard. And as we've documented on this podcast, as we've said recently, the Trailblazers have struggled, and we all know it. The Trailblazers haven't really had any success in the playoffs since they made it to the Western Conference Finals. I believe, Trevor, was it in 2018? I believe it was 2019. It was 2019.
It was 2018. It was 2018.
Are you sure? Okay, maybe it was 2018. I thought it was.
It was.
Okay.
It was one. I think it was.
I thought they played against the Warriors before they faced off against the Toronto Raptors, which would have been 2019.
Was that 2019?
Yeah, because 2018 LeBron was in Cleveland.
You're right.
So it was 2019.
You're right. It was.
So that's the last time they had any success, which really isn't that long ago. But Trevor, I might add that the lot's changed because the Trailblazers have gotten worse. They barely made the playoffs last year. They made the playoffs this year pretty easily, but they got bounced by a team that had less talent than they did considerably, at least in my opinion. And I think Trevor would agree. And Lillard's not happy. And multiple other things, kind of probably have led to this, probably internal things. I don't know. But, there have been multiple reports that he might want out. And a report came out today that he actually is very close to requesting a trade, requesting that he could be moved on from this team, that he could get out of Portland. And
let's just say he's tweeting some interesting things.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Trevor, as an NBA fan, as an NBA analyst, self-proclaimed analyst, where do you think Damian Lillard could go that would be a great fit? What would be the best fit for Damian Lillard?
I got two teams, Ryan. They're both in the Eastern Conference. One I love, one I like.
Okay.
I'll start with the one I like.
Let's hear it.
I think Boston is an interesting fit.
Yes.
Because Boston doesn't have a backcourt, or at least one that is good. I mean, who are their guards now after they got rid of Kemba Walker? Peyton Pritchard, Carson Edwards. Marcus Smart's not really a point guard, though. I'm talking like point guards. Peyton Pritchard.
What is he then?
Damian Lillard's a point guard. What?
What's Marcus Smart?
Marcus Smart's not a point guard. He's a small forward shooting guard. He's a wing player.
You can just defend. Okay, whatever. Okay, regardless.
Come on now. Come on. You're smarter than that.
He played point guard in college, but okay.
Maybe. He's not a point guard in the NBA. Anyways, Damian Lillard would be a really good fit there. The only issue is I don't know who Boston would have to give up to get him. A lot of people think they'd have to give up Jaylen Brown, and I don't really like that. But if they could figure out a way to keep Brown and Tatum and get Damian Lillard on that team, I think that would be a fantastic trade and a fantastic destination for Damian Lillard. And it would probably elevate Boston to one of the maybe first or second best team in the East, assuming Brooklyn stays. It'd probably make them the second best team in the East, assuming Brooklyn stays together. However, the only reason I don't love this move for Boston is because I do think they would have to trade Jaylen Brown. That's what I'm seeing online. That's what a lot of like mock trades are. They include Jaylen Brown. I'm looking at one right here. It's Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Aaron Nesmith, and a first-round pick. I think that's absurd. That is a lot to give up for Damian Lillard. I think they could keep either Brown or Marcus Smart, but they'd have to give up one of them. And if they gave up Marcus Smart, they would probably have to give up a lot of draft picks, which they do have those assets. They do have some assets, but I don't know. I think it would be a perfect fit if they could keep Brown and Tatum. I just don't think they can keep Brown and Tatum and get Damian Lillard. Yeah. We'll see. But the team I love, the team I think is the perfect trade assets and the perfect fit is Philadelphia. Philadelphia has a struggling, overpaid point guard who apparently Stephen A. Smith, again, the other day said is surrounded by yes men and he is babied. Yeah. And he, doesn't work on his craft, doesn't have the work ethic. So if I'm Philadelphia and I'm hearing that and that's true, I am calling Portland right now and going, we'll give you Simmons, we'll give you Thibault because Thibault costed them the series after fouling, I believe, Kevin Huerter on a 3 in Game 7. And we'll give you 3 first-round picks for Damian Lillard. And if I'm Portland, Damian Lillard wants out. His trade value is going to go down the more and more he says things publicly, like the tweet today. I don't have the tweet pulled up, but it was very cryptic. I would consider doing a trade like that. And I think with Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid and Seth Curry and Tobias Harris, I think that's just a perfect fit and a really, really nice roster construction. And it gives Philadelphia something they haven't had. And that it gives them a perimeter shot creator. Seth Curry he's better at it now. He's more of a shot creator than he used to be. But there are other guys like Danny Green. He's not really a perimeter shot creator. I look at guys like Furkan Korkmaz. He's not a shot creator. If Philadelphia were able to get Damian Lillard, they would have an elite perimeter shot creator and an elite interior shot creator who can also play from the outside in Joel Embiid. I think that's a perfect fit. They have the right assets, and Ben Simmons is clearly not the guy there. And I think it would be a perfect move to get rid of him and a couple others for Lillard.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up 2 good teams, honestly. I can't argue with both those destinations, and I was actually going to bring up one of those destinations myself. So I was gonna further explain and talk about that, and that was Boston. Boston is actually a team that I thought of that I don't think has been talked about enough. I think they certainly have to give up Jaylen Brown. I think people need to realize Damian Lillard is a top 10 player in the NBA, maybe even higher. He might be a top 6 or 7 player. Point is, he's a top 10 player in the NBA. You got to give up, a really good or elite young talent for him. You just have to. So they're going to have to give up Jaylen Brown to get him, and plus a couple picks. I would not be surprised. And I think it would be great. I mean, look, Trevor, Damian Lillard and Jason Tatum would be one of the best duos in the NBA immediately. They would be one of the best teams in the NBA immediately. Let's not kid ourselves. Jason Tatum and Damian Lillard are bona fide players. They're fantastic players at their respective positions. So I think that would be a great fit. I think Boston would love that. I think Tatum would love that. And I think that moving Brown is something you have to do if you want to win now. If you want Lillard, you're winning now. You're trying to win now. Lillard's not young. I mean, I believe he's 31 or 32. The guy's not super young. He might be a little bit. I think he's around that age. He's not in his mid-20s anymore. You're trying to win these next few years, and if you're trading for Lillard, that's what you're doing. So I think that they'd have to accept that, and I think it would be worth it. I really do. I think this is a great fit. This team has, normally it has a good culture. Brad Stevens is a good I thought he was a decent head coach. He always has been, and now he's their GM. I think we'll see what he does as GM, but I think that this team has a solid foundation still, and I think that it would be a good fit with Tatum. Another place that I think would be really interesting, and it's a team that I said will make moves in the offseason, is Miami. Miami has said, and it's been rumored for a while, that they're trading Tyler Hero. Look, they're trading him. He's not going to stay. They are going to be trading him, and it's probably for his own good, if I'm being honest. Keeping him away from Miami, that city, is probably a good thing, right? So him going to Portland might be a better spot, a little bit of a less of a party city.
Might need a break from Miami.
Yeah, he might need a break from Miami. But I think that this would be interesting because they have the assets. They have picks. They have Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. They have a bunch of young shooters, young guys who could develop into more that they could give Portland, right, to help them rebuild. And I think that Damian Lillard would love to go to a fantastic culture in Miami. One of the best head coaches in the NBA in Eric Spoelstra. One of the best leaders in the NBA in Jimmy Butler. I think that this would be a good fit. I think because it's a strong defensive-oriented team, Lillard's defensive weaknesses could be masked. And they need consistent scoring, other than Jimmy Butler, Jimmy Butler really hasn't been consistent scoring, at least not towards the end of the year and in the playoffs.
Not this season, yeah.
Yeah, so they need consistent scoring. They have the defense and the leadership, and Lillard can help with the leadership, and he can help with the scoring. So I think this would be a really interesting fit, and it would automatically make Miami a top 5 team in the NBA, in my opinion. I think it would be a fantastic trade, and I think Miami would jump right back into the NBA championship discussion. So,
yeah, one more development in the Damian Lillard saga is the coaching hire, and trust me, I understand the very serious allegations off the court about Chauncey Billups. That should not be taken lightly.
Yep.
But I will say Damian Lillard, I think, liked Chauncey Billups, and I think liked this hire by Portland. If I'm not mistaken.
I don't think they hired him yet.
I thought it was like pretty much.
Well,
I think they did.
I thought I wasn't sure. I thought with this whole thing that it was all kind of like they haven't actually done it yet, but you're right.
I'm going to look this up. I thought they were like pretty much.
It was, but then I thought like there was all this drama about it. So like with the whole, allegations to Billups, I thought that like they hadn't actually pulled the trigger, but like we can assume that they will pull the trigger. I guess it can be assumed for the sake of this conversation. Right. So.
Okay. Well, it sounds like Billups is hired, but now there's a lot of backlash on the decision.
Sure.
So either way, that is complicated. I thought Lillard liked Chauncey Billups, but it just seems like Portland's a mess right now in general.
Does, yeah.
So I think the best thing for Damian Lillard, if he wants to win a ring and if he wants to be on a true contending team, and it would be to get out of Portland and to get out of the Western Conference, because the Western Conference is just a gauntlet right now. So many good teams, and the West is only going to get better. I mean, next year,
same with the East.
I look at the East is getting better. It's still not it's not as good as the West, and I think everyone understands that. But I think for Damian Lillard, I think going to the East would be a great fit for him. You don't have to deal with the Warriors getting healthy. You don't have to deal with the Lakers getting healthy. You don't have to deal with the Nuggets getting healthy next year. You don't have to deal with the new darlings of the Western Conference, my Phoenix Suns. The Clippers are going to have a team.
Yep.
The Grizzlies have a young and up and coming team.
Pelicans.
So the Pelicans, maybe. The West is just brutal. And I think in the least, Damian Lillard could have a lot of success. And we talked about those 3 teams, the 3 teams we just mentioned: Philadelphia, Boston, Miami. If Damian Lillard goes to any of those teams, Ryan's right. They're all top 5 teams in the NBA, right? Like they're not top 5 teams in the East anymore. They're top 5 in the NBA. Yep. They're probably second behind Brooklyn in the East, assuming, as I said, Brooklyn keeps them all together. So I think for Damian Lillard, all 3 of those teams would be great fits. He'd be able to win. He'd flourish. He'd probably, be the same Damian Lillard as he was in Portland, and also not have to deal with the brutal Western Conference every year. So for me, I think that going to the East makes sense for him. And I think for the East, it's great because for years, the East has been labeled as the weaker conference. And it's true, the East is weaker, but it's getting better. And getting another superstar in Damian Lillard would only help that status as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it'll be really interesting, Trevor. It's gonna be really interesting offseason with all these trades, with the Simmons rumors, right? With like little guy, small guys,
Kawhi
like
Leonard,
Hero, Kawhi, right? Damian Lillard now, and with free agency,
and Luka's frustration with the Mavericks. I mean, they won't trade him, but that's gonna be interesting.
Sure. I mean, I think that he'll remain there. But yes, I agree.
I agree with you.
I
But
think
Porzingis might be on the way out as well.
I hope for their sake he is. But regardless, it'll be interesting. A lot of trade opportunities, a lot of free agent opportunities, and the draft is loaded. This is a really, really talented
It's a great draft class. We'll talk about it.
Trevor and I'll get into this next month.
Podcasts.
Yeah, I think next month. I think it's late in July, so we will talk about it at length leading up to that. But it'll be really interesting in the NBA offseason. It's gonna be a fun one. But Trevor, I think that we've covered that, and I think that there's one final topic that we want to discuss, just something to change it up from the all NBA discussion that we've had on this podcast, and it's just MLB related, right? It's been a while since we talked about the MLB, but I thought that this was something, or we thought this was something that we should talk about, because the MLB, Trevor likes to talk about this, and unfortunately I think he's right. The MLB doesn't really know how to make some good rules and kind of keep the fans engaged, right? Try to make rules that satisfy the players and the coaches and everybody, the ownership and the fans and everyone. And it's no different with what's happened recently, Trevor. What's happened recently is the MLB, Rob Manfred, has decided to implement a new policy banning a bunch of other substances, right? And saying pitchers cannot and are not allowed to use a multitude of foreign substances during the game. I'm not going to list them all off right now, but there are a handful. And what's happened is he implemented this policy, Trevor, mid-season, just like, okay, policy's in right now. And what they're doing is the umpires, after each inning or after a few times, right, after an inning, after a pitcher will finish an inning, close out a side, they'll walk over to the pitcher, have him unbuckle his belt, untuck his shirt, blah, 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 and look at his hat, everything. They'll investigate the pitcher mid game, and this happens constantly now, and it's just and a lot of fans and a lot of the players are outraged and they're angry because they're like, "Are you kidding me? Mid game, you're just gonna have a pitcher do this?" And it's almost every game too. It happens almost every game, if not every game. And a lot of people are like, "Man, check them before the game or after the game." Right. Or also a lot of people are angry because the policy shouldn't even have been implemented mid-season. A change mid-season in the rules is kind of ridiculous. And you don't see any other league do that. Have you seen the NFL change policies mid-year?
Nope.
Have you seen the NBA change policies mid-year?
Nope. Unless it's COVID protocols, which is a once in a billion scenario. But your point's right.
Yeah, that's different. And typically it's for lessening the protocol, right? I mean, COVID protocols were established right? So it's not like it's more restrictive, which is what this rule is. And people are angry. And I wanted to get your thoughts, Trevor, because, I think it's ridiculous making a rule change, policy change mid-year. But I was wondering what you thought.
I'll never miss an opportunity to rip baseball, Ryan. And they always seem to find more fuel to my fire. And this is just another example of that. I don't watch baseball. It puts me to sleep. If I want to take a nap, I'll watch baseball. And it doesn't help that my D-backs are historically bad this year. I'm not going to call my D-backs. The D-backs are historically bad this year. I don't want to associate with them. They play next door to my Suns. And, every time I walk by, I work downtown. Every time I see that stadium, I just think about, what an irrelevant waste of space. Anyways, back to the rule though. Yeah, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You're gonna airport check a pitcher, put them through TSA security every inning. It makes absolutely no sense. I agree with you. If they wanted to implement this rule, implement it for next year and check them once before the game. That's all you need to do. I mean, why do you need to check him after every inning? Unless he goes into the locker room from the dugout, then maybe you can check him again. But they have 1,000 cameras. They can see him sitting in the dugout. They can follow him 24/7. There's no need to check a pitcher 6 times a game for pine tar or chicken fat or grease or I don't even know what the substances are. I don't really. So. Yeah, this is, again, baseball just being dumb, overreacting to a non-problem. They love to overreact to non-problems, but then underreact to actual cheating. So
100%.
It just makes no sense to me. Baseball being dumb, new, what's new? It's just another Sunday, another dumb rule by baseball.
Yeah.
This one's just atrociously bad. There's literally nothing good about this rule change. And if I'm a pitcher, it would be, if I'm a fan, I'll actually start with this. If I'm a fan, baseball's already a slow sport for me personally, but now you have to check pitchers. Like that's only just going to make it even more slow.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I'm a pitcher, like how annoying is that going to be? I'm trying to get focused, locked in mentally, get my pitches down, try and give my team the best chance to win a game. But then in the back of my head, I have to worry about getting, screened by an umpire at the end of the fourth inning. Right. So I think that can disrupt the pitcher's rhythm mentally. I think it can disrupt the already almost non-existent flow of a baseball game. Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. It's a dumb rule, and I get why people would be outraged.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to add much more to that because you're right. It's trash that they're just implementing any rule, if I agree with it or not, mid-season. It's just ridiculous that they'd even consider that. And this, Trevor, just really, it just speaks to the ineptitude and just how poor of a commissioner Rob Manfred is. He's probably the worst commissioner out of any of the major sports. And, I don't follow hockey super closely, I'm going to be honest, but I haven't heard any major outrage for the NHL commissioner, on a national stage, like there has been for Rob Manfred. And this seems to be constant, right? I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, right? I don't know what he's doing. And it's such simple things too. Wait till after the season. And it's just ridiculous. And you're right, not addressing the real problems. How to keep your fans. You need to figure out what your actual loyal fans want, or you're just going to keep losing them. Don't try to pander to the NFL and NBA crowd. You're not going to win them over. Trevor, is there really – I don't think there's much that the MLB can do. Crowd. I don't think there's much the MLB can do to get Trevor to watch the MLB over an NFL regular season game. I don't think there's much they can do.
I'll watch golf over the MLB in the month of July because then I got football and basketball for the other 11 months of the year.
So. And in my opinion, golf with fans is pretty exciting, right? I mean, it's pretty intense, especially in a close – I think Trevor and I are bigger golf fans than most people our age. But regardless, it's relatively exciting, particularly a major championship tournament. It's just bad because they don't know how to properly keep their fan base, and they're not really looking at the major problem, which is the salary cap or the lack thereof. It's a major issue that won't be fixed. And it's something that I'm never going to let go because it creates a massive disparity, unlevel playing field in the MLB, and it'll never be fixed. And I think it's just disgraceful. And it's too bad because I used to be a major, major baseball fan. I still watch baseball from time to time. I still watch my Cleveland Indians. But it's just they could make it better, and it's disappointing that they don't make the effort to do so. But, I think we've kind of ranted on the MLB enough. I think we've said what we had to say on that. I don't know if, Trevor, you have anything else you want to mention, shout out before we wrap up this podcast.
I got nothing today, Ryan. Catch me in downtown Phoenix tomorrow for the Suns game. Hopefully we I'm not going to the game. I will be at a restaurant bar down there watching the game very close to the stadium. And the way those Suns fans cheer, you'll probably be able to hear them from the outside. Unlike the Whispering Clippers fan base. But yeah, I think there's going to be, what was I going to say? I think there's going to be a flight for Cancun on Tuesday, and I think they have a couple extra spots open for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I got a couple tickets in the back. I can go get them for those guys. But anyways, go Suns. I love my Suns. And as I said already, this will be the biggest basketball game I've been alive for in my entire life. So no pressure, but let's finish the job and get to the finals, boys.
Yeah, before I just want to shout out the Arizona Diamondbacks' 24 straight road losses and MLB record, one of the worst teams of all time. I just want to point that out because they're absolute garbage, and it brings a smile to my face. It really does. Second thing, shout out to my Cleveland Cavaliers getting the 3rd overall pick in the lottery. This is going to be franchise changing. The draft is loaded. Jalen Green, thank you. Here we come.
Lord.
Evan Mobley, please come to our team. We need you, please. Get us a superstar. So I'm really happy. Top 3 picks, superstar coming to our organization, going to change us forever. I'm excited. The East is going to be great. The Cavs are going to be great. The Diamondbacks are bad. It's great.
What is going on?
And, we can wrap up this podcast. I think that it's been a good one.
I do want to actually, real quick, Ryan, before I let you go. Yeah. My friends and I, when we were driving home from the road party game rally thing yesterday, we were talking about, post Chris Paul, what do we do? And someone brought up Colin Sexton. And I go, yeah, I think Colin Sexton would look great in a Valley uniform. And the way we're playing right now, we're guard U, basically the NBA guard university. We got 3 max guards on our team, and I'm including Cameron Payne in that. I'm being a little facetious. But if I'm Colin Sexton, man, playing in a black Valley Boys jersey alongside Devin Booker. How about those fans? I'm just saying, I think he would look good in a Valley Boys black in about 2 years from now.
Man, oh man, I really hope that doesn't happen with all my heart, because then I'll have to be a secondary Suns fan, and I wouldn't want that. But Trevor,
or Garland. I think Garland would be interesting in a Suns Valley Boys jersey as well. But we'll leave it at that for
let's
now.
not talk about that. Maybe when the Cavs make the playoffs, you can have one of them. But with that, we're going to wrap up this podcast, Trevor. It was a good podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed. And we will be back next week talking about more NBA, MLB, NFL, whatever comes up.